And on behalf of the Department of Athletics here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, we do want to welcome you to this Academic Advisors Breakfast sponsored by our department. And if you have attended the other orientation sessions throughout the week, I'm sure you have heard the numbers when it relates to our student athletes and their performance in the classroom. And just in case you don't remember those statistics, I will quickly review some of those numbers for you. First of all, our student athletes are indeed student athletes, the emphasis being on student. We make sure that they keep their priorities in order. Accordingly, our student athletes, in comparison with the regular student body, the numbers show that they excel at a higher pace than the regular student body. Of the 16 sports teams that we have, 10 of those teams have cumulative grade point averages of 3.0 or higher. In May, 32 student athletes graduated. 16 of those student athletes graduated with honors. Our men's tennis team had the highest grade point average of any team in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So we applaud you all for the efforts that you do. Thank you. We applaud you all for the efforts that you do to ensure the academic success of our student athletes. And that is the reason why we have gathered here this morning. And we intend for this occasion this morning to not be a one-time occasion where we talk about NCAA rules and regulations as it pertains to academic performance. But throughout the school year, we intend on having other activities as well that will involve you. So again, we want to thank you all for your support. The academic advisors, the professors, the deans, directors, department heads, anybody that touches our student athletes in the classroom. We want to thank you all for the great jobs that you all do to ensure the academic success of our student athletes. At this time, I'm going to bring to the microphone Ms. Elise Wells Kilbert, the Associate Athletics Director and Senior Woman Administrator, to give our invocation. Then we will have breakfast, and shortly we will come back and resume our program. Ms. Kilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Good morning. Wonderful. Let's bow our heads for the invocation. Dear gracious Father, we thank you for the many ways you have blessed us during this faculty and staff orientation. We are grateful for those who are gathered at this hour to share policies, procedures, and to fellowship on one accord, enhancing the future growth of the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. With our gratitude and love, we ask you to bless the preparers of this meal and bless the fruits of their labor to nourish our bodies, minds, and souls. I pray all these things in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Two of the great things about our new chancellor, number one, naturally, he is a diehard supporter of academics at the academic institutions such as UAPB. But he also is a diehard supporter of the athletics program and how athletics and academics intermingle. We call up at this stage of our program our new chancellor, Dr. Lawrence B. Alexander, to make some remarks.
Good morning. So good to see you here this morning. I know you're enjoying the breakfast, and I certainly am. And I'm glad you were able to join us this morning for this very, very important event. This event, which is an orientation that deals with academic advisors, is important to this university, to the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, because we want to achieve both in athletics and we want to achieve in academics. And the NCAA and the SWAC and all of our conferences and counterparts all have rules, regulations, and policies that compel our students to succeed, our student athletes. And in order for our student athletes to succeed, they really do need our support. Student success, I always say, is first and foremost in the hands of the student. but students need the support. That's why we're here. We're here for the students. And so I appreciate all of you who have come out to listen, to dialogue, to learn more about that critical role that you play. We appreciate all that you do for the students because, as I said, it is valuable, it is important, and it holds a dear spot in my heart because, as Dr. Hardy said, I really do value what we do in athletics and what we do in academics. I came here from the University of Florida, and I had the privilege of serving on the board of directors of the University Athletics Association. And in that role, in that capacity, that was one of our primary focuses, is to focus much on the success of students in our athletics programs. So I appreciate your support for that, and I hope you have a very, very good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Alexander. The NCAA places so much emphasis on academics that it awards grant monies to assist universities in making sure that their respective student athletes excel not only in the athletics arena, but also in the classroom. The next young lady is one of the benefits of one of those grants. We received a grant last year for a learning specialist for at-risk teams. Ms. Angela Rochelle will come to the microphone now to talk about a new classroom monitoring system that we implemented back in January, Grades First. Ms. Rochelle. Oh, I should say she recently got married, Ms. Edwards.
Good morning. I knew I was going to correct him on that. This morning I have the task of just basically talking with you all about Grades First and our academic progress reports. As Mr. Hardy stated, Grades First is a web-based student performance monitoring system. So it allows our athletic department administrators and coaches to receive real-time feedback from our professors and tutors. It also allows us to track, the academics of our student athletes, absences of our student athletes, and as well as any concerns that you may have. There are several features that Grades First offers us. One of those is the being able to send out academic progress reports to our professors. And it's very important that we get that communication back from you because, like I said, that's a way for us to track our student athletes' absences and academics. When we sent out the progress reports, and some of you may already be familiar with that because I know the last academic year, myself as well as some of the administrators sent out progress reports. When we send those out, they will come to the professors in the form of an email. The progress reports, if there are several student athletes that's in that particular class that we need progress reports from, they will all show under that one email, but you will have to click on each individual student athlete to complete that progress report for them. The progress reports will ask the number of absences that the student athlete may have. We ask that you complete that. Student athletes are supposed to give the professors travel excuse letters. If they're in a sport that's in season and they have to travel, they are supposed to provide the professors with travel excuse letters. So when you complete the absences, that will actually give you, the opportunity to see if the travel excuse, the days that they're going to be off campus, is in line with the number of absences that they may have. And if it's not, there's also a comment section on the progress report where you can explain that, if there are missed classes and it's not in line with, when they're supposed to be off campus, okay? Also, it would ask the current letter grade of the student athlete that they have at that time. We ask that you please, if they have a letter grade, whatever it may be, to please put that in there. If you do not, or if they do not have a letter grade at that time, just kind of in the comment section, just kind of specify that, they don't have a grade at that time. And then there is the comment section. If you have any concerns, if you have praises, for our student athletes, we ask you to please put that in the comment section. Anything that, that you may want to say, please put that in the comment section. Also, when the progress reports are sent out, there is an allotted time that they must be completed. So if you do not complete the progress reports in that allotted time, then you will not be able to go back and complete it. So we ask that you please, as soon as possible, if you receive a progress report, to go on and complete that, or as soon as possible or within that allotted time. The information that we get back, it is shared with the administration and also as well as the coaches. So if there's any concerns that we need to deal with, we will deal with those accordingly. So it's very important that you all complete the progress reports and send it back to us. If you have any questions as far as not being able to get onto the progress report, please feel free to give me a call or email me, and I can see if I can kind of walk you through it. Again, if there's any concerns, even if you don't have a progress report to complete at any time, if you have any concerns with, any of our student athletes, please feel free to give me a call or email me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. At this time, Ms. Edwards and I will vacate the stage and we will turn the microphone over to Ms. Nancy Lake, who is our Director of Compliance, who will talk about the NCAA rules and regulations as it pertains to academic advising. Ms. Lake.
My name is Nancy Lake. I am the Director for Compliance here at UAPB. I've been here for approximately 10 months now, so I don't know a lot of you, but I've spoke to and sent emails to a lot of the advisors and deans and chairs over my tenure here. I'm just not going to spend a whole lot of time, because I know I don't have a lot of time. I do like to talk. But I do want to spend the time going over the rules and regulations as it relates to our student athletes. First and foremost, whenever I meet with a student athlete or a prospective student athlete, I explain to them that in order to be a student athlete, you must be a student first, athlete second. You can't practice, you can't compete, you can't get on that field unless you're a student first. We always strive for our students to be good students, to be role models, to do the things that they need to do in and out of the classroom to represent the university, not only athletically, but also academically. As I mentioned, as far as for a student athlete to be eligible to compete at a Division I institution, there are rules and regulations that are governed by the NCAA, our conference, which is the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and our institutional controls. All of these three must be followed in order for our student athletes to be eligible to practice, compete, as well as receive athletically related aid. There are two types of eligibility. There's first the initial eligibility, and that's for our incoming freshmen. This is anyone that has never enrolled at any institution that's coming in as a college freshman. And then continuing eligibility refers to our student athletes that have already matriculated at an institution and have to meet different requirements. First, the initial eligibility for our incoming freshmen, it starts in high school. The NCAA has done a tremendous amount of work researching, looking at data to come up and decide on what has been successful in student athletes. They have found that it started at the high school level, that the courses that they've completed at the high school level actually attributes to their academic success on campuses. So in order for a student athlete to receive aid, competition, and practice in that first year, they must meet certain criteria that was achieved during their high school years. If a student athlete has met those criteria to be eligible for competition in their first year, they're defined as a qualifier. If they did not, meaning that they did not meet the criteria, they did not graduate from high school, then they are a non-qualifier. Our non-qualifiers are required to, they say, sit out a year. They have to concentrate on their academics. As I've told many of student athletes that have been deemed as a non-qualifier, it's not a bad thing. It just means that you need to concentrate on your academics in that first year of enrollment. And after that first year of enrollment, then they can gain their eligibility. As I mentioned, the NCAA looked at the high school records of a lot of student athletes and determined that there are certain criteria that they need to meet during their high school years in order to gain success. They must complete 4 units of English, 3 units of math, 2 units of natural science, 1 additional unit in English, math, or science, 2 units of social science, and 4 units of academic courses. You say that's a lot. It is. And it starts in their freshman year. So they just can't wake up in senior year and say, hey, I think I want to play athletics, and I want to go to D1 school, and I'm going to be a qualifier. They have to actually have that in mind in their freshman year, so cause for preparation. Besides that, the ACT and SAT scores are received. They look at the grades that they received in those tests. They use the highest SAT or ACT scores for that student athlete. Then, based on those 16 core courses that I mentioned previously, they come up with a GPA. They take that GPA and compare it to their SAT or ACT scores on a sliding scale system to determine whether or not they meet the criteria. All of this is done through the NCAA. That's nothing that is done on our institutional campuses. Again, they have come up with this determination based on a lot of research saying that our student athletes are more successful if they completed these core courses that prepared them for college. As with everything, things change. In 2016, there are new requirements. The bar has now been lifted. So now that student athletes previously could have received athletic aid, they're making some changes. They're saying that student athletes now must complete and have a GPA of a 2.3 in order to compete. We can still give them aid, we can still let them practice based on the old schedule, but in order for competition, now those 16 core courses must be a minimum of a 2.3. Any questions on initial eligibility? Okay. Continuing eligibility. There's 3 factors in order to determine a student athlete's continuing eligibility. It's their academic requirements, the progress towards degree, as well as their GPA. Continuing eligibility, starting with the course selection. We need to make sure our student athletes are pre-registered. It makes it a lot easier when they pre-register for their classes. We encourage them to follow the schedules that are put forth as far as pre-registration, to select their courses, to take their course selection seriously, to meet with their academic advisors, to make decisions wisely, and that starts with planning. As far as our department, we are looking at a term-by-term evaluation. We want to make sure that our student athletes are taking the right courses, are achieving the right grades, having those hard conversations early on so that they can maintain their eligibility. As well as certification, we use the degree audits and the transcripts for all of our student athletes. Now, as a freshman, in order to practice and compete, you had to meet the standards set forth by the NCAA. So the NCAA actually determined whether or not they are a qualifier or not. Now, at the completion of the freshman year, the NCAA wants to make sure that our students that enroll as student athletes are matriculating and making progress towards degree on a continuous basis. So they put measures in as far as making sure academically they are eligible. After the first year of enrollment, their freshman year, a student athlete must have earned at least 6 credit hours each term. So in the fall term, they must earn at least 6. In the spring term, they must earn at least 6. For football, they've made a change. They said that for the fall term, student athletes must earn 9 credit hours. If they do not earn 9 credit hours, that upcoming academic year, they would have to sit out 4 games. Again, they've done a lot of research and they found that football student athletes were not passing or were just passing 6 credit hours. And just passing 6 credit hours is not going to make you progress towards your degree at the rate that you should. So they raised the bar and moved it to 9 credit hours per semester, for the fall semester. Additionally, you have to earn 18 credit hours during the academic term. So between fall and spring, a student athlete must earn 18 credit hours. And that's standard for every year of enrollment. They must earn the 18 credit hours. There's an additional twist for freshmen. They must complete 24 credit hours. Now, the 24 can be achieved by, well, first you have to earn the 18 between fall and spring, and the additional 6 credit hours can actually be earned either the prior summer or the summer after their first year of enrollment. Again, if you do the math, you're like, it doesn't add up, and it doesn't, because 6 credit hours earned each semester is not going to get our student athletes graduating within 5 years. That's just the bare minimum that we're talking about. Cumulative GPA is very important because it's important to our institution. You have to be in good academic standing, and the NCAA is aware of that. So the requirement is that for the first year, they have to earn at least a 1.8 GPA. At the conclusion of their second year of enrollment, student athletes must do the same things that I mentioned before. You still have to meet the 6 each term. You must earn 9 credit hours for football. Nothing has changed. And you still have to earn the 18. But at the end of your second year, you now have to declare a major. And that is very crucial and important to our student athletes. And by declaring a major, you also have to meet your progress towards degree. The NCAA wants to make sure that our student athletes, again, are our students, that they're matriculating within 5 or graduating within 5 years. They're never going to make that if we don't track it from day one. So it's important when student athletes have decided on a major early on, they don't have to necessarily declare it as a freshman, but for some of your degree programs, what I've seen, some requirements are needed during their freshman and sophomore years. So it's important that if they have a decision or decide on a particular major, that they're meeting with those department heads and making sure that they're doing what they need to do so that when they come up to meeting a percentage, they actually have those credit hours in that degree major. The cumulative GPA is raised a little bit. They now have to be at 95 of the minimum GPA. Now, I use 2.0 as the minimum for GPA, but if your department has a GPA of a 2.5, then of course it would be 95% of the required GPA for your department. Any questions? No? Okay. We're moving right along. Year 3, same requirements as before. 6 credit hours each term. Football must earn 9 credit hours in the fall, 18 credit hours during the academic year. Now your GPA required is at least a 2.0 or 100% of the required GPA for your major. You have already declared your major, and now you're meeting progress towards degree of completing at least 60%, have completed at least 60%. Let me talk about, I forgot the little asterisk, degree applicable. Those 6 credit hours that your student athletes are enrolled in, they must be towards their major. If they're just taking whatever classes just to meet the bare requirement, they're not making progress towards degree. So that's why it's important that when you're looking at the 6 credit hours each term, that those are in their major, that they're taking classes that's going to move them towards progression for graduation. All right, year 4, at the conclusion of year 4, same requirements. Must earn 6, must earn 9 for football, must earn 18. Your cumulative GPA, again, is at 100%. You already declared your major, and you must be 80% towards degree. Any questions? No? Okay. The 40, 60, 80%, as many of you are aware of, talks about the number of full-time terms that are completed. So what I've outlined and what I'm talking about is not absolute. There are exceptions to the rules. There's a lot of exceptions to rules, but as far as the basis is, when you're looking at 40, 60, 80%, it's really based on the number of full-time terms completed. So the assumption is if a student athlete has been matriculating all along and have been in full-time terms each semester, at the end of their sophomore year, they would be at 40%. At the end of their junior year, they would have to meet 60%. Remember that the general education requirements can be used towards progress towards degree. The courses also have to be in their major. Calculations, this is the fun part. The calculations of progress towards degree is very, very simple. It's just the number of credit hours earned in that degree divided by the total number of hours required for graduation. And that's the percentage. So I put something on the board. The student athlete has completed 49 credit hours in social studies education, which is 126, and is entering their third year of enrollment. So they would need to meet 40%. So I took the 49 and divided by the 126, and it came out to 38.88. So the student athlete did not meet progress towards degree requirement. Big thing here is the decimal point. You gotta do it at least 2 decimal points or 3. Otherwise, you'll have rounding that could take place. If the progress towards degree calculation results in a fraction, you are not allowed to round up, even if it comes out to 39.9, and it should be, you'll say, oh, well, it came out to 39.9 is really 40%. 39.9 is 39.9. It's not 40. I used the 126 because of the number, and I knew it would give me a fraction. So 40% of progress towards degree is 50.4. That's 51. We add more. We don't round down. 60% is 75.6. That's 76 credit hours required. 80% is 100.8. That's 101 credit hours required. Any questions on it? I heard grumblings. No? Okay. All right, and then I use another example, 120 credit hours, where a lot of our degree programs have reduced down to the 120. It's real simple now. The math is real easy. 40% is 48. 60% is 72. 80% is 96 credit hours. So anything that dropped down to 120, you don't have to worry about rounding. Okay. Remember, the remedial and developmental courses do not count towards the progress towards degree requirement, because progress towards degree requirement are looking at only those courses that are used towards graduation. Now, if your department actually uses those developmental courses as part of the requirements for graduation, then you can count them. But if you can't use them towards graduation, then you can't count them. Okay. A student always needs to be earning credit hours towards their major once it's declared. If a student decides to change their major, we need to make sure that we're communicating with the student, letting them know that because you're changing a major, it may change your progress towards degree, and they may become ineligible. For our transfers, I know a lot of our coaches run around and try to get the transfer students, the incoming transfer students' transcripts evaluated. And I've seen all kinds of transcripts. I've seen the copies from the screen prints and everything. You're kind of squinting, trying to look at the numbers, trying to figure out what this course is. But we're going to do a better job as far as giving you the materials and information that you need to make an accurate assessment of the number of transfer credits for our student athletes. Because it's important when they're transferring into us, they actually have to meet a certain percentage as well, because they've already matriculated, maybe not at our institution, but at that junior college or another four-year college. So it's important when we're doing the evaluation that we're evaluating those transcripts to determine how many of those credit hours are actually applicable to your degree program. And based on the preliminary evaluations, we determine whether or not a coach should continue to recruit a student athlete to attend our university, because if they don't have enough credit hours and they're promising a student athlete aid, we may not be able to give that aid when they come in the door. They may have to sit another semester, or based on various bylaws, they may have to sit out an entire academic year until they meet that percentage. So the evaluation of transcripts is very important. Again, the NCAA understands that. They're looking at the junior college transfers, the 2-4 transfers. They understand that their matriculation is a lot different from our freshmen coming in the door. Basically, they want to make sure that they have the same opportunity to graduate with a bachelor's degree within a 5-year period from the first time of enrollment. That's why when we have our junior college transfers coming in with an associate's degree, they also have to be meeting that certain percentage of progress towards degree at our institution. So our overall goal is, whether you're a freshman or a transfer, that we want you to graduate within 5 years. Part of the NCAA, again, they've got a lot of people, they got a lot of time to do a lot of research. They've determined that the probability of a 2-year college transfer in being successful at a 4-year institution, they must have a baseline of certain courses completed, meaning that they need to have transferable English, math, natural science, and some physical education courses. I've been doing compliance for probably about 7 years now, and I've seen all kinds of transcripts, especially from the junior colleges. And some junior colleges I just shake my head to, because I can't imagine how people are graduating with an AA degree. But you see all kinds. It's very important that we understand that student athletes, when they're taking these physical education classes, we're only going to count that football one time, but you can see it on the transcript counted maybe 4 or 5 times. We see, various things on the transcript from our junior colleges that were acceptable and led to them actually receiving their associate's degree. But when it comes to matriculation at a 4-year institution, half of those credit hours may not be suitable in our degree programs. And that's where we have to be honest and making sure that we're giving all of the information to our coaches and our potential student athletes. There's no reason for us to sugarcoat the situation if the student athlete does not have the academics that's necessary for them to meet our goal of graduating in 5 years if they didn't take the right type of coursework. Again, it goes back to communication and making sure our student athletes, potential student athletes that are transfers, understand what we're trying to do here at our institution. Rule of thumb, the degree audits. I work closely with Mrs. Fulton, and we look at the degree audits on the system, and we look at the transcripts that come out of the system. And in my time here, I've worked a lot with a lot of departments that the information that's in their files, the academic advisors' files, is different from what's on the system. I just ask that when you're evaluating a transcript or you see that a class is a substitution, that we kind of keep on top of that and making sure that that information is updated, the information is submitted to the registrar, so what's in your records matches what's on the system and what's on our books as well. so that all 3 records are the same. Any questions? Y'all are quiet group. Not one? Okay. You want to go back to work? No? Okay. Academic advisors, your roles. These are some of the things that I've found in the short period of time that I've been here. And the first and foremost important thing is to verify the student athlete's major. I've been amazed that some student athletes don't know what their major. I think I'm in this major. You think? What do you mean? Who's your advisor? They should know what their major is and the requirements for that major. We're going to be doing a series of rules education for our student athletes to make them accountable. We're not going to hold your hand and do everything. You need to understand what you're doing, the purpose by why you're here, and the responsibility that it takes to maintain your eligibility, as well as to be able to compete academically as well as athletically. So first and foremost is we need to verify your major. And if you change your major, we need to make sure that that information is in the system and you're meeting with the right advisor. So when they're advised, they're actually in that major. I talked a little bit just recently about DataTal and the degree audits. The degree audits, the transcripts, and the degree curriculum sheets that the academic advisors have, all 3 should match. It makes life a lot easier, so when we're looking into the system, we're making sure that everything that we see is what you see, and what you see is what we see, and we're all on the same page. Because we want to make our student athletes responsible. So we're going to challenge them to go on to WebAdvisor, to go look at what you've completed. Go look at what courses you need to take. Go look at and determine where you need to do, so that you're actually having a dialogue as far as advising student athletes instead of telling them what's the next course of action. Also, the submission of the substitution forms in a timely manner is greatly appreciated. Student athletes must be enrolled at all times full-time. Full-time is a minimum of 12 credit hours. But remember, about 10 slides ago, I talked about making progress towards degree. 12 credit hours a semester is not going to meet graduation in 5 years. So where 12 is a minimum, student athletes should take 15, 16, 17, depending on their degree program. It has to be based on that particular student athlete and what they're going to be successful. I'm not going to say a student athlete should take 17 credit hours just because they'll graduate in 4.5 years or 5. If they're not going to be successful in the 17, don't take it. They don't need to take it. They need to take the right number of credit hours in order for them to be successful. Sometimes freshmen, they might need just to take 12 credit hours that first semester so that they get their feet, wet as far as college life and being able to balance not being home. Maybe in that spring term, they can go back up to 15 credit hours. But the minimum number of credit hours a student athlete is required to actually enroll in is 12 credit hours. Now, if they roll in 12 credit hours, and let's say they're taking a math class, and they realize math is not for me right now, and I'm not doing very well, and they decide, you know what, my friend dropped the class, I'm gonna drop the class. Well, when they dropped that class and dropped down to 9 credit hours, they just dropped off a team because they immediately became ineligible. So when a student enrolls in 15 credit hours and they decide they want to drop that class, then they drop down to 12, they still can remain eligible. So when they enroll in just the minimum, then they need to make sure and understand that you have no room to drop a class. If you drop a class, you immediately become ineligible. Repeat classes. It's very important as far as timing. Timing is everything and planning is everything. When a student athlete repeats a course within the same semester, remember they have to meet 18 credit hours. Go back 15 slides ago. They have to meet 18 credit hours. in an academic term. So if they take a class and then they decide to repeat it, then based on the numbers, that might cause them not to meet the 18 credit hour rule. So repeating courses is just as important as far as timing. We encourage student athletes to try to repeat courses, maybe during the summer or at a different time. But if it's a requirement in order for them to move forward in their degree program, then it's definitely a part that we have to actually talk about. What athletics is going to do, our part of the role as part of the team of the academics of our student athletes, we're going to monitor the number of credit hours they're enrolled in. We're not asking you to be the police to make sure that our student athletes are enrolled in a minimum of 12 credit hours. We're not asking you to monitor whether our student athletes are currently enrolled in the minimum number of credit hours to maintain full-time status. Angela mentioned before, we have systems in place that we're going to monitor that information on a semester-by-semester basis. We're going to look at the course selection. We're just going to monitor it. There needs to be checks and balances, making sure that our student athletes are just not signing up for another physical education class just because they don't want to take, science this semester. We're going to make sure that they understand that the decisions that they make may affect their eligibility. We want to make them accountable for what is being done academically. If they decide to change their major, and some student athletes do change their majors, but we want to monitor and figure out the progression. When is the right time to actually change your major? If you have a rising senior after 4 years and you're saying you want to change your major, that might cause a problem. We're not going to tell you you can't, because we want our student athletes to graduate. Our goal is we're not trying to produce athletes. We're trying to produce student athletes. Students that are graduating from this institution. So if they change their major because they feel that, I came in under one major and now I really like this and I want to change my major, we're going to work through the process of making that a smooth, seamless transition for them. It may or may not work, but that's based on the decision of the student athlete. So again, they have to have accountability and buy-in for what they're signing up for. We're going to monitor the add drops. Sometimes, courses get dropped just because, let's say, if there's not enough students enrolled in a specific section and they're dropped, that's something that we're going to monitor. Or if a student athlete decides, hey, they're never going to know, I'm going to drop this class. But we're going to know because we're going to be monitoring on a day-to-day basis and speaking to that head coach and speaking to that student athlete and making them accountable for the actions that they decide. We're never going to tell them, you can't do that. We're going to say, if you do that, this is what's going to happen, and then make wise decisions from there. Again, I can't stress it enough, and I do, when I meet with potential student athletes, I tell them, you have to be a student first, athlete second. If you're not a student, you can't be an athlete. It's that simple. We take our programs seriously. We want our student athletes to be role models, not only on the field or the basketball courts or soccer fields or whatever sport they're involved in. We want them to be role models in your classrooms as well. Like Angela mentioned before, it's important as professors and instructors that you give us the feedback about our student athletes, the good and the bad. The good first. No, I'm just kidding. But the good and the bad. Honestly, let us know what we need to do. It's a communication that we need to bridge between both the student athlete, academic advising, as well as athletics, because we work hand in hand together.
Let's give Ms. Lake a big round of applause for that information she shared with us. The same for Ms. Edwards and Ms. Kilbert, and we want to thank you all for being very attentive. When it comes to our student athletes, learning never stops, even when they're traveling. We provide laptops to go on team buses when they travel. In some cases, some teams even take advisors with them on the road so that they can have organized study halls between competitions and between practices. Learning never stops for our student athletes. So we want to thank you all for the role that you play. One of the NCAA requirements is that we provide educational sessions like this. And in the eyes of the NCAA, if you do not sign in to a session like this, the NCAA takes for granted that you have not attended. So we ask all of you to please sign the sign-in sheets. If there are ever any instances where we have to report to the NCAA on any type of issues involving academic matters with our student athletes, the first two things they will ask, did you provide educational sessions, and did those who attended, did they sign in? If you did not sign in the eyes of the NCAA, you did not attend. So please make sure you sign in. Again, we want to thank you all for the roles that you play in educating our student athletes and ensuring that when they leave UAPB, they leave with a degree in hand.